It is the Fantasy Pros Best Ball Show with myself, Tom Strachan, and Andrew Erickson. We are back for another week of Best Ball. Tonight we'll be hopping in a live draft, Underdog's Best Ball Mania contest, because when you talk Best Ball, it is very hard not to talk about Best Ball Mania. It's quickly become one of the flagship contests of the Best Ball era. Andrew, how much are you looking forward to getting into the Best Ball streets tonight on Underdog?
I'm looking forward to it a lot. This is actually the first one that I have entered into under my account. I did do a Coach Speak Index dual Best Ball Mania draft a couple weeks ago. That was a lot of fun, but it's the first one that I'm entering. I've been on the DraftKings streets a little bit, doing a lot of drafts on Fast Draft as well. So it'll be fun to dive head first into Underdog and see what all the craziness and ADPs is all about. Apparently, what I hear from the grapevine is that wide receivers are they go crazy, especially even though it's only half PPR. The drafters can't help themselves.
Yeah, so last year was kind of peak craziness for wide receiver on Underdog. Last year, there was like 24 of the top 36 picks were wide receivers. There were only 2, maybe 3 running backs in the first round. This year, it's gotten a little bit better. But as you get later on into the draft, there's still a huge amount of wide receivers going in the top 100 picks, to the point where there's 2 more wide receivers going in the top 100 than last year. So wide receiver is a very thirsty position on Underdog, and it always can take people by surprise if they're not ready for it. The cliff edge kind of comes around about the Michael Pittman range. Once we see Michael Pittman creeping up into the rankings and the ADP, that's when we need to be kind of happy with what we've got so far, or ready to take some swings, because it can get real ugly real quick. If you want to jump into the draft wars, we are just waiting on a few people. So jump into the Underdog BBM draft right now. There are 5 spaces. We are in the 30-second lobby. After last time we drafted and Andrew was at the controls, we decided we didn't want to put him under the pressure of a 20-second clock. So we are rolling with 30 seconds tonight. For anyone unfamiliar, this contest has a cool $2 million up top. Finish inside the top 30 and you're making at least 50 grand. If you make the final, which is a 539 person final, you'll make $3,750, which feels like quite a specific amount, but it's actually exactly the amount that if you put 150 entries into this contest, that's how much it would cost you, $3,750. So if you want to max enter, making the final will mean that you break even at a bare minimum. And the other thing that we have is a regular season prize. So at the end of week 14, which is the end of the best ball regular season, this will pay out to the team who scores the most points across that $100,000, which is a nice bonus. We have seen teams in the previous years, when there was more up top for the regular season prize, really try to cater to that, build towards that specifically. Now, they've brought the price structure on this down a little bit so they can pay out more to the finalists, which seems to be making most people happy. But basically, if you finish inside the top 10,000 in regular season points total, you'll make at least $100. Andrew, do you think there's a way to build for both the regular season and the week 17?
There probably is a way to do it, but it seems like you're really trying to thread the needle, where you're trying to get the best of both worlds, where we talk about how you can best optimize for those playoff weeks to really not only get the highest scoring players with correlation, but at the same time being unique in certain ways that we talked about in the DraftKings best ball tournament and some of the strategies we talked about last week. So I think that there's definitely some overlap, where if a lot of your teams advance, then chances are you're probably in the running potentially for the highest scoring team through all the weeks. But at the same time, it seems like you're probably better off trying to hone in on one of them, because I'd imagine that the teams that are the highest scoring cumulatively, they're going to look a little bit different than the ones that end up winning that week 17, that playoff week.
Yeah, I seem to remember 2 years ago, they didn't do a regular season prize last year, but 2 years ago, the team that won the regular season prize was out in the first round of the playoffs, because it can just take so much luck. And we know how difficult the best ball playoffs are. For instance, on Best Ball Mania, in the draft we do tonight, 2 or 12 teams will advance to the first round of the playoffs. Then after that, if you advance, to advance out of the next stage, only 1 out of 13 advance out of that pod, and then 1 out of 16 in the semifinals to get yourself to the 539 seat final. So there really is a lot that goes into making the perfect best ball roster construction. And we talked last week, and if people haven't checked out that show, they should really go back because we talked about all the best ball strategies that you could apply this year, the ones we like, the ones we don't like. And we've talked about the ones that have had historical success. There's also loads in the best ball guide over on Fantasy Pros about what has had historical success. So we're going to try and bring all that together. But Andrew, at the heart of it, it comes down to player takes. Like, I know that this is your time of year. You thrive. Like every single day when I open Twitter, there's another highly detailed thread from yourself. One of those that you put out a day or two ago was about 5 players who will rise up draft boards. And you had 5 guys who you seemed quite sold would be moving up. Getting any kind of closing line value on those players who jump in ADP can be quite a good thing in best ball as well. So those players out of the 5, CMC, Rashee Rice, Jameson Williams, DeAndre Swift, Deebo Samuel, who is your like most must have in any draft?
I think right now it's probably trying to get exposure to Christian McCaffrey, where he used to be going late in the first round, maybe even early second round. But
Second,
now
yeah.
I think it's going to be a situation where he ends up going into the middle of first round because there's just going to be enough people that convince themselves that it's all about the upside. That's how you win these types of tournaments is upside bets. And we know that Christian McCaffrey, when he's healthy on the field in the Kyle Shanahan offense, that he can score more points than any other player that takes the field, especially in a half PPR where he scores a bunch of touchdowns. He can catch passes out of the backfield. So Christian McCaffrey for me would be someone that, I mean, if someone took him number 1 overall, would you really be so, again, it would be very shocking, but you understand. You'd understand the play behind getting him first because, hey, he was first last year. And if he's healthy, then you could argue in week-to-week rankings that he's going to be in that top 3 conversation. So I think that McCaffrey is someone that I don't think that he's going to go down in price unless we get more news that's bad regarding any of his injuries. So McCaffrey for me would be someone that I think that you should be trying to get exposure to now.
Yeah, so I think there's 2 parts I want to just touch on there. So firstly, there's the game theory side of it. Nobody is taking Christian McCaffrey at the first. And if you think about when you draft out of the first, if you know, apparently nobody has ever gotten the 101, but if you're lucky enough to get the 101, it can feel quite samey when you draft there because the guys who come back on the turn at the 2-3, you find yourself picking the same guys, and quite a lot of your teams can look quite similar. You pulled Christian McCaffrey all the way up to 101, immediately you would have a very different roster to everybody else drafting from the 101, even if you just took the guys at the 2-3 turn like Josh Jacobs, T. Higgins, who normally fall there. So I think that's an interesting theory, but equally, I think it's kind of one of those things where I just really struggle with CMC in general. I think you're completely right that now is the time to get the exposure because he is only going up in price, and the fact that he took part in OTAs, minicamp, even in drills, which he didn't need to. Great, he's healthy, he's completely fit. That's fine, but we're talking about a running back who really hasn't stayed healthy for the last few years, and apart from one season when he first got to San Francisco, it's been quite up and down. And I'm not necessarily worried about the Achilles injury, but it also just feels fair to say, could he get another injury? Are we really banking on him to stay completely healthy? So I would like to not fade anyone in the first round of drafts this year. Like, I mean, for me, I a mass enterer to drafts. Like at the minute, I've currently got about 90 different slow drafts on the go, and it's a special kind of pain that you have to be sadist enough to enjoy. But I don't want to fade guys at the top of the draft. It's like they're all in the first round for good reason. So you take your stands further down, and like if I've got less than 5% of any guy in the first round, then I'm going to be upset. Is there anyone in the first round that you'd be willing to completely fade at this point, Andrew?
So there are 2 guys that come to name for me. So one is Saquon Barkley, just not drafting him this year where he's going in his ADP just because of the workload volume. Just the track. I'm trusting the process with Barkley, where just don't draft the guy coming off the massive workload as an older running back. And usually that works out. It's totally possible that he breaks the narrative. He does. LaDainian Tomlinson, Ezekiel Elliott did it, I think, 5 or 6 years ago when he was coming off a massive workload. He ended up turning back another top 5 running back season. So is it possible for Barkley to do it? Very much so. But he's not going to be as good as he was last year. I feel really strongly about that, just given how historic he was. So Barkley for me. And the other guy would probably be Amon-Ra St. Brown. I just very pessimistic about of him just remaining the center of the Lions offense. It's a new offensive coordinator coming in. I think Jameson Williams is going to take on a massive role, bigger than he had last year, more like we saw in the second half of the season when he came back from his suspension, where we saw the target share kind of flatten between Sam Laporta, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Jameson Williams. They were all kind of seeing around 21, 22% of the targets. So I think that Amon-Ra St. Brown, I think he's a little bit overvalued, and I like Drake London more than St. Brown. I think that he could be the wide receiver 1 overall, and I know that Drake London usually goes after St. Brown, who's usually a late first-round pick. And I think Jared Goff, there are enough holes in his projection this year where if his touchdown rate comes back down to earth, they're playing more outdoor games this season. He's not a quarterback that can win with mobility. So if Amon-Ra St. Brown is the most expensive the most expensive Lions receiver, I just feel better about taking some of the value with some of these, either Laporta or Jameson Williams later on. And I did mention Jameson Williams as a riser. I think that because St. Brown is still viewed as number 1 wide receiver, I still think that Jameson can go up in ADP, but I think that it's capped. And I've seen this, I've kind of studied this throughout the years, looking at number 2 wide receivers, that there's it's like a firewall almost, where they can't get so expensive because at the end of the day, they're still viewed as the number 2 on their team, and that keeps their price relatively in check. Now, sometimes it does get insane and out of control. Gabe Davis, a couple of years ago. But besides that, usually number 2 receivers are a little bit cheaper.
Yeah, definitely. And like for me, I'm kind of on the other side of this one a little bit more, as we're just waiting for 2 more people to jump into this draft before we get going. So we will get going soon. And if you want to draft alongside us, do jump in now. It's the BBM 30-second clock that we'll be doing tonight. I'm more on the Amon-Ra St. Brown side. I think that JMO, for how volatile he is, only 35 picks or so cheaper than Amon-Ra. And I look at Amon-Ra, even last year, which was kind of viewed as a bit of a down year for him. Yes, he dropped 250 receiving yards from the previous year, which was 2023 when he went absolutely nuclear. 1,500 receiving yards, 10 touchdowns. But he made up for it with 12 touchdowns last year, and he's had over 140 targets in 3 consecutive seasons. So there's plenty of reason why I just can talk myself into Amon-Ra. But it does feel like, Andrew, you're probably on the side of quite a few sharp people who seem to be a little bit worried about Amon-Ra, but I'm not there at the minute. And we are just waiting on one last person. Before we kind of get into that, though, I've just got to mention that if you like this content, myself and Andrew, we are here every single Monday, all the way up until drafts lock. Every other week, we'll be doing these live drafts, different platforms. We've done drafters already. We'll be on FFPC soon. We've done DraftKings as well. We're going to talk about strategies, stacks, sleepers. Last week, we talked about micro-strategies and roster construction. Every couple of weeks, we'll be live drafting and breaking down our picks in real time. And if you're in the drafts with us, we want to know what you think about our team, and we want to know if you want us to take a look at your team and review them, because we're here to help you build the best ball teams you can. So tune in every Monday at 4 p.m. Eastern on Twitch at twitch.tv/fantasypros to get the most practical best ball advice on the web. Andrew, we are getting very close now. We are in the draft room, and I see we've got the 102. So what are you hoping falls to us at the 102?
At the 102, well, it'll be interesting to see what 101 is. Probably Jamar Chase. That's usually what ends up happening in these drafts, especially with his ADP 1.1. So basically, you don't see a lot of people get away from him.
Yeah.
Bijan, for me, I think that he's my RB1. I don't think we need to overthink it. High on the Falcons offense. I think they can do a lot. So do you have any pushback with that? If not, we can get the pick in.
No, I love Bijan this year. I think that it just makes all the sense in the world. Bijan has been just an ascending player. in various years. Last week, or was it last week, or maybe it was another show we did. I talked about like how I've been looking at the archetype of hero RB and what I really want from those guys, and it comes down to goal line work, target share, and sheer volume. And when you look at all the guys in the first 24 picks among running backs, the only guy who is above average in all three categories is Bijan Robinson. So that just makes him an incredibly easy click for me.
Yeah, my RB1 for a reason. I think that it's funny because he's been someone that's kind of we're waiting for him to break out, right? Like maybe breakout's probably not the right word, but to really put together that, oh my God, this guy just put together this RB1 full-fledged season. Even last year, it was really Gibbs that put together that really strong run, even though Bijan was kind of right hot on his heels. So I think this is the year, though, if the Falcons offense really can take a step forward with Michael Penix, that he can really take off. And I think now we can kind of think about, all right, is Bijan our hero RB? Is this the strategy we're going to go with? I think that something that's important to do is when you make your first pick, okay, now are we seeing a strategy start to kind of develop here? And Bijan definitely checks the boxes of a hero RB. So maybe it's time we start to look at some of these receivers, tight end, maybe probably not elite quarterback in round two, a little aggressive. We'll look at some tight ends and receivers coming up next.
Yeah, and I know we've got a couple of people in the chat in the draft with us. We've got Peria002. I've definitely butchered that name, but they're at the 106. Took Justin Jefferson. Dread saying, I would rather have Gibbs over Barkley. That's a conversation which I've heard a couple of times recently, and I fully understand it. I can understand the people who push back against it because of the worry about David Montgomery. But when you look at sheer talent of what we saw last year, it's kind of hard to doubt Jahmyr Gibbs could be the RB1 overall. Andrew, what if we got any kind of like negative news towards David Montgomery, could you make that argument to push Gibbs up to the 101?
The 101, I don't. Probably. I think he probably could. Gibbs is just an uber talented player, and the fact that he's used so heavily in the receiving game, I think is kind of what can separate him from the pack. Now, in half PPR, it's not felt nearly as much. It's not as substantial as a benefit, but at the same time, I do think that he's taking after Alvin Kamara all those years, where the guy catches, again, not to the extent of Kamara, because I think Kamara was averaging 90 receptions per year, something bonkers like that. Gibbs isn't quite up to that level, but he's going to be a focal point of the offense, whether the Lions are trailing in games, whether they're winning in games. We know Gibbs is going to be on the field, and that if this offense does take a step back in terms of red zone opportunities, well, Gibbs is so explosive that he creates his own red zone opportunities. So I'm not going to argue against somebody going with the talent. I think if you're drafting 150 teams, then it probably doesn't make a lot of sense to take him so aggressively over the players in ADP. But if you're only drafting a handful of teams and hey, this is my shot to get Gibbs, then I think you could be a little bit more defiant and concrete with your player takes, especially at the top of the board when you're only drafting a handful of teams versus the sickos that are going 150.
Yeah, definitely. There's a huge amount to be said for that. It's get you guys. If you're going to draft 4 teams, then you absolutely should be taking the guys who make you feel happy, the guys that you're going to enjoy. If you are building a portfolio, and there's an article in the Best Ball Draft Kit guide that I wrote about this, like spreading your exposure and when we want to do it and what we should be looking for with it. But basically, I don't see the need if I'm building out a portfolio to take heavy stands on first round guys. And just going back to Jahmyr Gibbs, like last year, 6 games with over 20 PPR points. 4 of those came when David Montgomery was on the field. So there's every reason to believe he can hit that ceiling again. We're a few picks away. Nothing too crazy has kind of happened so far. Lad McConkey, AJ Brown going off. We're kind of approaching the tier where it gets back to us where we kind of have to decide, do we want to go dual running back, or are we going to go dip down to one of these wide receivers, T. Higgins, Rashee Rice, who's up several picks in ADP over the last week, and then it's Garrett Wilson, Marvin Harrison before you get to the kind of next range. Andrew, what's your gut feeling of what you'd like to fall to us here?
I think I want to go with the wide receivers. I think that we're shaping up for a hero RB build, which is, what I kind of talked about after we drafted Bijan. And that's kind of how I feel. We're starting to get a drop off a little bit at the running back position. We're getting Chase Brown, Josh Jacobs are the two top guys. Rashee Rice, that was another guy I talked about, his ADP rising. This is expensive.
T. Higgins, Garrett Wilson, Marvin Harrison. I'd be quite happy with T. Higgins at ADP, unless you're making a case for anyone.
I really like Garrett Wilson. Like that's probably my guy here. So
let's do it. I know you like Justin Fields. I like Justin Fields. I probably don't have enough Garrett Wilson at the minute because I've been taking plenty of T. Higgins. I also like Chase Brown, Bucky Irving. Trey McBride is somebody I'm willing to take quite a big stand on. Can I talk you into Trey McBride in round 3 for a bit of a balanced start with one running back, tight end, and wide receiver?
Yes. As long as we get the Trey McBride touchdown regression this year, we need these touchdowns from Trey McBride. I am cool with that. So it's interesting that I'm just looking at this now. McBride and Marvin Harrison are kind of going back to back in terms of their ADP. So it makes it really, I guess if you're picking at the turn, you could probably pick both of them at that 2-3 turn. Do you have a stance on, again, we went with McBride in this one, but I would have also been very much okay with Marvin Harrison. Do you lean McBride because of the positional advantage that you're looking at with tight end, or Harrison really want to buy that second-year breakout?
Yeah, I'm good with Trey McBride because for me, it comes down to what Trey McBride did without touchdowns last year with just the one rushing touchdown and the one fumble recovery touchdown was outrageous. Like, he gave us so much, and he gave us those huge spike weeks, and he gave us it in week 17 when it mattered the very most as well. So Trey McBride's somebody I think can definitely ascend to the next level if he had positive touchdown regression. I think the Cardinals in general are a team I want to bet. And I do like Marvin Harrison, but I'm just a little more confident in Trey McBride versus the players around him compared with Marvin Harrison compared with the players around him, I think. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, for sure. I get that.
And yeah, just in the comments, we got a comment saying Rice's ADP is going nuts. It really is just kind of like ascending a lot. And like Andrew, so give me the 30-second sales pitch on why you'd still be buying Rashee Rice at the 210 where he went in this draft.
You saw what he did last year when he was healthy. He was basically a wide receiver 1. His target share, I think, led the NFL. Insane. 3 games. So it's just a lot of extrapolating. That's what gets me concerned about it.
It's a lot of extrapolating.
So,
Go on.
I know you said, hey, give me the sales pitch of why you're going to be drafting him here, and I don't know if I'm going to be drafting at this price.
Okay.
I really hope that this doesn't trickle down in a redraft where he's this expensive, because we were talking about him. I think we got him again by accident on DraftKings. I think we got him at the 3-4 turn and a full PPR site, and to see him now going inside the top 3 rounds at the back end of the second round, it's just, there's a lot of concern about. I just have reservations about guys that come off of these season-ending injuries where they're spending part of their offseason rehabbing. It's different a little bit from McCaffrey, where he's not rehabbing necessarily. Like, he could have came back for the playoffs, but the knee injury at the end of the year against the Bills in that snow game, they're like, we're shutting him down, like he's not coming back. But Rice, part of his offseason has been rehabbing, and when I've looked at receivers that have busted in the past, usually it's guys that were projecting to take this monster leap. They usually go at the end of that wide receiver 1 tier, and then they ultimately, don't deliver what was promised of the hype. It's just when the hype becomes so massive, you run into issues, and it's as simple as, well, Rice wasn't 100% coming back from his injury. And what can hurt you the most is if he's playing, but he's not at 100%. So it's not like you can swap somebody else in for him. So that's my concern. I think best ball wise, it is a little different of a conversation, just because if he's fully healthy, weeks 15, 16, 17, okay, now it's a little bit more of a conversation. But redraft, it's much tougher for me to make that click this high.
Yeah, I just kind of struggle because all that extrapolation occurs when Xavier Worthy wasn't ready, and obviously he picked up the pace and he got on along the season, and his splits without Rashee Rice are notable. Obviously, Travis Kelce found a little bit better of a groove as the season went on as well. But Hollywood Brown also missed all this time, so I just find it a little difficult to expect him to suddenly have 34% target share like he did over those opening weeks. But I'm not necessarily clicking Xavier Worthy as well a lot. Part of me just feels like at some point we've got to talk about Matt Nagy and his offenses and the detrimental effect it's had on the Chiefs over the last couple of years. But we can come back to that another time. We are one pick away, and there's one guy in the queue, and I'm okay with it. We've talked about him a few times. Last year, to our detriment, we drafted him on several teams last year, and it didn't work out for us. But what is it that makes you want to pull Jaylen Waddle up ahead of Cortland Sutton, DJ Moore, Xavier Worthy, George Pickens quickly in 10 seconds or less?
I think that he's just going to bounce back. He has too proven of a player. What he did for his first 3 seasons, all 1,000-yard campaigns. And if we're projecting impending doom for one of these Miami Dolphins receivers, it's not going to be Waddle. I don't think. I think that would be more likely it's Tyreek Hill that is the one that basically would crumble and collapse to see his value kind of crater. So Waddle for me, I think he gets back to what he showed us his first 2 years in the NFL, where basically he was a fantasy wide receiver 1, and he did it 1 year. It was with a ton of volume. The next year he did it with receiving yardage and efficiency. So Waddle to me, 26 years old. I can't quit Jaylen Waddle. Maybe that's the quote of this stream. I just can't, man. I don't know why. I'm obsessed, and I get that he gets hurt all the time, which has probably been a big impact on why he's been underperforming. But I would rather take Waddle than Hill.
Yeah, so we're one pick away, but we'll come back to Waddle in a second. So we've got one running back, two wide receivers, and a tight end. Like in this range here, I feel like we should probably take another wide receiver and then deal with running back in a little bit. Xavier Worthy's fallen at ADP as an effect of Rashee Rice. I'd be happy scooping up that volume here, or it'd be George Pickens for me.
Let's scoop up Xavier Worthy, and I think that we're seeing as Rice goes up and up and up. Yep. We're now seeing Worthy go down and down and down, as you know. That's kind of how things work with the ebbs and flows. So,
yeah. Well, Dreadess is mentioned in the chat that you've been obsessed with Waddle, and like I do want to go back to the Waddle pick because, like, I really liked Waddle last year. I drafted a lot of him, and probably the biggest stance I had in the first round last year was fading Tyreek Hill to about 4, maybe 5% across 400 teams or so that I drafted. But Waddle led the team in yards per target last year, led the team in yards per reception. He just needed the ball more. And when Tua was out there, he ranked 3rd in pass attempts per game. But the splits were massive when he wasn't playing. Like Waddle averaged 4.7 more PPR points in games with Tua last year. So I don't think it's necessarily just even needing a bounce back. It's just needing Tua to stay healthy, which of course is quite a dice roll. Are you find because you're betting on Waddle to be a good pick this year that you're ending up with Tua being above your kind of consensus?
I'm not. And that's something that I try to recognize because we see this a lot of the time where we don't necessarily see the breakout wide receiver paired with the breakout quarterback. I think that we'd like that to happen, but sometimes it doesn't really work out that way just based on the way that receiving ends up scoring. You know, is a receiver winning because he's seeing a lot of volume? Is he scoring a lot? I think on the touchdown side of things, it's hard to get those breakouts that are not correlated. Tua, to me, yes, I think that he's a stackable quarterback. If you draft a Dolphins receiver, I think it would make sense because all that he's going to do is provide value with his passing arm. But I wouldn't say I'm above consensus on Tua because I'm just betting on Waddle. And I don't think Tua, if he's just supporting really one fantasy wide receiver as a top 15 guy, let's say Hill falls off, gets traded or what have you, I don't think that means Tua. Okay, well, he can be a top 10 quarterback. He can lead the NFL in passing yards again, like he did a couple of years ago. I don't really see that with him. And maybe it's a little bit of hedging on my part. Yeah, I really like Jameson Williams, but I'm not this massive Jared Goff person in terms of drafting him. I do think, though, when the planets align, when you're talking about breakout receivers and quarterbacks, if you do feel really confident about both players, then I think that's like an opportunity where, hey, this is where you really should be bullish. You know, if you really like the quarterback in a vacuum, you like the receiver in a vacuum, and then, oh, wait, they're on the same team as well. Okay, I really need to be bullish on this situation. And off the top of my head, I'm trying to, I guess, like the Jets. Again, I really like Garrett Wilson. I really like Fields. So maybe that's an opportunity for, we do need a quarterback still. So maybe Fields can be someone that we look to target. But just kind of thinking about breakouts like that.
Yeah, if you're enjoying this kind of talk and you want more of mine and Andrew's player takes and all our takes on what kind of best ball strategies that we're using, then the Fantasy Pros Best Ball Draft Kit is what you need. Go over to fantasypros.com/best ball. It's a one-stop shop for ranking, stacks, ADP trends, rookie breakdowns, roster construction strategy. I've poured my heart and soul into some of those roster construction strategy articles, and it also includes exclusive strategy content for Fast Draft, which is a new best ball app where drafts take just 5 minutes. Andrew is in those streets constantly. Download the Fast Draft app and use code Fantasy Pros when signing up to get your first deposit matched up to $50. That's up to 10 drafts for free, and I bet you'll see Andrew in at least one of those. So we're coming up to us. We've got 2 picks before us. We've gone with a pretty traditional hero RB build here of a running back, 3 wide receivers, and 1 tight end. This is a bit of a running back tier coming up with Caleb Johnson, Aaron Jones, David Montgomery, Isaiah Pacheco. Justin Fields is sitting there, though. We could stack him up with Garrett Wilson, or we could try pushing him around the corner if you wanted to and take another player first. What stands out to you here, Andrew, as we are now on the clock?
Well, when I'm comparing, because I have my rankings uploaded here into Underdog, which you can do, and a lot of the guys I have ranked are not on the board in terms of their ADPs. So
should we
go?
Well, you like Debo.
I don't like Debo.
Oh, sorry. We're going to time out, Andrew. You got 6 seconds. Make a choice.
Justin Fields. Bring him home.
So you're way above consensus on Justin Fields, but I don't hate that pick. I think that you can make a very sensible argument that he deserves to go around where Joe Burrow does, because Joe Burrow is going to have to catch lightning in a bottle for a second straight season to really pay off his current cost. But we need a pick here. If you could just toggle to ADP, let's take a look at the players at ADP after we made that reach. So I quite like Ricky Pearsall, and then it's kind of getting a bit murky for me. Are you buying the Ricky Pearsall year 2?
I think that he's intriguing. I think that the connection with Juwan Jennings is something that I don't want. And there's a reason why Juwan Jennings is going so much more. He's been a big riser, I think, over the last month or so, too. So I don't mind Pearsall, again, as another wide receiver that we could draft. I like Jaden Reed as well. Again, we talked about not going to elite quarterbacks. If we went Mahomes here, Fields and Mahomes, we have Worthy and Justin Fields. We're not like super, super elite. I kind of want to, do you want to experiment a little bit?
I don't, because we reached so much on Justin Fields. I feel like we've got to take a wide receiver here. We've got 3 seconds. I'll let you choose which one.
All right, it's Pearsall. Pearsall's pick.
Okay. See, now if we'd played it a bit more off ADP and we'd taken Mahomes there, maybe we'd been able to get Justin Fields back to us. I think that's probably the way to do this one. But because we pulled Fields up ahead to get that stack, okay. And like, generally speaking, like, I kind of view best ball drafts as like, you've got draft capital buckets. You can spend your money however you see fit, but then it's being mindful of it. And because we've made such a reach on quarterback ahead of ADP, we've got comments in the chat saying that is aggressive for sure. But I think that's fine. But now we can push quarterback, and we have to say Justin Fields has been a real hit. And so now we're looking at, okay, what can we do in round 14? What can we do in round 15? And maybe it means that we end up with a 2 QB build because of it, instead of a 3 QB build, which can feel a little patchy with Justin Fields. But I mean, look, this is a guy who gave us 2 different games last year where he had 2 rushing touchdowns. So I'm always down to get a little bit different, because I think that it can get very easy to fall into the best ball rhythms of just building similar rosters over time, and bringing Justin Fields up that high should definitely give us a slightly different roster. But what is it about Jaden Reed that makes you so confident in him? Because I know a lot of people are feeling doubts around the Packers offense in general. It's Josh Jacobs, and then everybody starts feeling a little bit worried. Has Fitz been in your ear and convinced you on something about Jaden Reed?
I think that I really like the week-to-week spike potential with Jaden Reed. I think that the Packers are one of these receiver rooms that really is better in best ball, because they don't really project as, okay, this guy every single week is going to lead the team in targets. You don't really feel that way about the Packers receivers. It really is a receiver room that you're kind of throwing your hands up in the air trying to figure out, okay, who is the main guy? I think that they would like Reed to be that player that maybe they funnel the most targets to. He's playing from the slot, but at the same time, he's not running a full allotment of routes, so that becomes problematic in terms of his week-to-week projection. But we've seen the ceiling with him in a healthy Jordan Love, where he can really spike. And we saw that at the beginning of the season last year when Jordan Love was healthy. They were really run heavy last year. I think a lot of that had to do with, I don't think Love was at 100% for most of the season. So even if they table back the rushing a little bit, uptick a little bit of passing, we talked about the Packers defense, I believe, last week, talking about no Jair Alexander, maybe some issues here. And Tom, I have to say, I really appreciate you defending my egregious reach on Justin Fields to the best that you could, because I know it's definitely a big reach. And hey, if he scores 20 points per game, it won't matter where we got him. We'll just be we'll be victory lapping. But yes, going back, it probably would have been made more sense to take Mahomes first and then and then take Fields later on.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm kind of okay with it because at this point in the offseason, it's still about seeing how the drafts land to you. I don't think there are many people doing best ball drafts at this point in the season who aren't going to draft 20, 30 teams at a minimum. So for me, getting into a different roster construction is something I like doing. I've got a team on drafters where I'm in a slow draft at the minute, where I decided that the only running backs we were going to take was rookie running backs, just to see how it turned out and just to see how good this year's class could be. Admittedly, that's only in a $2 draft, so it's not like I'm blowing all my budget for the year, but trying out these things, pulling players up at times, trying to get a little bit unique. And ultimately, when we talk about Justin Fields and what we hope he can be as a fantasy pick, we are looking for that nuclear outcome. And if that happens, it really won't matter that we reach 30 spots on him. If he fails or if he's mediocre, then that's where it might sting us, and that's where we can try to work things out as we go. And we can balance that by looking for different stacks. We can balance that by looking for different values. We've got a chat point in the chat saying Pereira 002 going, I'm going with a Raiders stack. What could go wrong? I love the Raiders stack this year. Just give me Geno, give me Brock Bowers, give me Jacoby. Like, I'm fully down with that. We are 2 picks away. Now, Andrew, I'm not going to curse anything or say anything, but we could definitely circle back to a point we've already made. Or the running backs, I know you like Jordan Mason. I know that there's plenty of interest out there in Emeka Egbuka, who picked up some really positive speak over the last couple of weeks with Baker Mayfield and Mike Evans both talking him up. Then as you go down, Keon Coleman, somebody who Fitz is really, really high on for this year. Cam Scadabo is somebody who lots of people love within the fantasy football industry. So this feels like a really fun round. I'd be quite happy.
Mahomes almost made it back to us. Yeah, he almost made it all the way.
If Mahomes had made it back, that would have been great. But okay, so what about Kyler Murray for our second quarterback, and then we'll leave it? Does he have the same bye week as Justin Fields?
No, he does not.
Okay, well, so I'd be good with Kyler Murray, and then we could push this around the corner. And the guys who are like Egbuka, Jordan Mason, and potentially Jaden Higgins, who would your priority be?
I like Jordan Mason. I think that he just has a ton of touchdown upside in the Vikings offense that we expect to be very efficient this year. So I know he's the top of ADP, and yeah, he's one of the top guys in my rankings in terms of running back.
Hey,
so
I'm good with it. I mean, what we've got now is a real traditional hero running back kind of build. We took our hero running back in round 1 with Bijan Robinson, who we both think can be the RB1 overall. He's the RB1 overall in my rankings, which are from fantasypros.com. Andrew, is he yours as well? Yeah.
Bijan, yes, he is my number 1 ranked running back.
And the hero running back strategy over the course of years, we dipped into this last week. It has been an incredibly solid strategy. It's been used less in the last few years than it was. Go back to 2021. 85% of teams on Underdog were drafting hero running back builds, down to just 50% last year. And while even myself and plenty of other people are talking up this could be a bounce back year for zero running back, it's so easy to make the same argument for hero running back. And hero running back, after all, was what won on Underdog last year with Jonathan Taylor, Jamar Chase in the first 2 picks. It was a Joe Burrow double stack of Chase, T. Higgins, Joe Burrow. I think they still had D-Bros guy, Jermaine Burton, but I don't think he contributed a single point to the team across the entire 17 weeks. But that's what you can get away with when you absolutely hit the nuclear button with Jamar Chase, T. Higgins. So plenty of fun still to be had and plenty of roster construction stuff that we can get into as we go. We've got where we're at. We're kind of closing in on round 10. Andrew, would you just mind recapping the team for the audio listeners, please?
Yeah, so at quarterback, we have Justin Fields and Kyler Murray. I'd like to point out we were 1 pick away from Mahomes falling all the way to us. he fell back. I think he fell almost 30 spots past his ADP. So that would have been wild if we end up getting both of them. So running back, Bijan Robinson and Jordan Mason. So our hero RB start. And then we're starting to hit on some of these later guys. Wide receiver, Garrett Wilson, Jaylen Waddle, Xavier Worthy, Ricky Pearsall, rounding out the 4 wide receivers, who I feel pretty good about. I think we got some good upside in that group. And then tight end, we went with an early round guy, Trey McBride. And that's going to wrap up we have quarterback, tight ends, or quarterbacks stacked, Justin Fields and Wilson. We have Kyler Murray stacked with his tight end. So, again, besides the Fields reach, which partially because I had him so high up in my ranks, I maybe wouldn't do that again. But besides that, overall, like the build so far.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting point because I find that I always upload my rankings to these sites, but I quite often spend more time on the ADP side, and it's that kind of thing. If you can see here, you've got Erickson's rankings on the My Rank tab, and then ADP right next to it, and that ability to see when you're higher or lower on a player, it can really allow you to go, okay, well, that is my guy who I would take 30 picks ahead of ADP here. But maybe that means I should push it. I've been grabbing him ahead of ADP a bit, so let's push it and see if he falls to me and all that kind of stuff. And also, guys who are fallers, if a guy we rank at like 120 and we're at pick 100, you're not going to want that guy. But if we're at pick 140 and we've got the guy at 120, then it's definitely becoming intriguing. And of course, you can find both mine and Andrew's rankings on fantasypros.com. Rashad Bateman is the guy that you just starred there. Now, look, I know that you're big on the 5th-year breakout argument, is it, for Rashad Bateman?
Yes, the 5th-year annual breakout. Although he's not on a new team, if the Ravens have been willing to deal him, he would be on a new team because there have been rumors that he's been wanted to be acquired by other teams, but the Ravens said no because they know he's a stud when he's healthy.
Yeah, I appreciate everybody who's hitting the subscribe and follow button over here on Twitch. If you guys want to draft with us every week, this is the place to be doing it. I see we've got ourselves a couple of new ones over there. Roster baiting, appreciate you. And we will definitely be roster baiting over this one when we get to the end of the draft. We are 2 picks out. So we're kind of hitting a bit of a dead spot for wide receivers at this point. Rashid Shaheed's still on the board, but after him, look, I'm gonna put my foot down that Marvin Mims isn't necessarily the guy I want to be drafting. Can I talk you into Zach Charbonnet?
Yeah, I think that Charbonnet is fine where he goes. We know that he can deliver RB1 weeks when he's off the board. So I would have been okay with the pick, Tom, if he was available, but unfortunately he's not. I don't mind Shaheed. I think that he's like the perfect best ball receiver.
Yep.
To be honest.
And as a wide receiver 5 as well, that kind of ticks a lot of boxes for me. Obviously, the quarterback situation different, but last year when both him and Olave were healthy, Shaheed had a 30% target share to Olave's 20%. Now, maybe we don't get the best of him this year, but I like getting a 5th wide receiver in round 10. That definitely ticks boxes. The reason I'm kind of quite high on Charbonnet, I've been working on a video for my channel, The Fantasy Sanctuary, today about the 10 most important backup running backs. And I just think that Zach Charbonnet could potentially have contingent value as well as standalone value this year. He's so good when he gets the ball in volume and as well in the receiving game. Sam Darnold absolutely peppered Aaron Jones with targets last year. But enough about him. Let's talk through the guys at the top of ADP. We could take Trey Benson for a bit of Arizona correlation, or would you prefer Bhayshul Tuten?
I like Tuten. I understand that the OTAs have kind of been up and down with him. He's fumbled, but he's rookie. So I think that he still has a ton of upside. So I like going Tuten here. Remember as we're building this hero RB team, it gives us the luxury to now just take shots on a lot of these running backs. Can I guarantee that Bhayshul Tuten is the rookie running back that you need to draft this year? I mean, I'm really high on him, but he could be one part of the cog, right? Of the late round running back that we end up drafting in some of these double digit rounds, because even though we drafted a quarterback pretty early, we drafted an elite tight end, our top 5 wide receivers, I feel pretty good about. Like going to
Yeah.
battle with this squad. Usually when you go early quarterback, early tight end, you usually take a sacrifice at the receiver position. Now, we don't really have a locked and loaded RB2, but I'm cool with punting the RB2. That's the whole premise behind hero RB strategy, is you can replace that production. So far, yeah, I'm liking the way that this strategy is going out with this hero RB approach.
Yeah, it's worth pointing out that one of the big benefits of Hero RB is that when you want to start loading up on running backs, which the point we did, it's the range where we've seen league winners come from over the years. We've seen the likes of James Conner, we've seen the likes of Rashad White, we've seen, going back further, Leonard Fournette. This is the area where the running backs have doubts. People start to dry up on wide receiver. But if I can double dip in this range and get 2 running backs in most drafts, then I feel pretty good about my running back room. And the only time I'm not really looking to do that is if I've maybe started dual RB and gone running back, and I'm so far behind the mark at other positions that I feel the need to avoid running back a little. But you can see it here. Since our pick, there really isn't many wide receivers going off the board. It's tight ends, it's quarterbacks. So it's a great area to live in if you need the quarterbacks. I understand people being wary of the Jags backfield, comment in the chat saying I'm currently staying away from the Jags backfield, no idea who emerges. It would be so much easier if we were able to thin this down to a 2-headed backfield. 2-headed backfields are fine, we can deal with them. 3-headed backfields, they do become quite problematic. I do wonder whether somebody like Etienne gets traded, because he does have a small amount of trade value. Now, Tank Bigsby has no trade value, and obviously we're not going to get rid of Tuten, so it becomes a little tricky, and it becomes a little tricky to know what the Jags want to do this year. I mean, obviously, Shad Khan probably would like them just to be semi-respectable for the first time, but is Tuten really the key to that, and enough to get rid of somebody like Etienne, who was a former first rounder? And for all the kind of mixed opinions on him, he's been pretty good for the Jags a lot of the time. So yeah, I don't want to get too heavy on any of the players from the Jags in terms of like how I'm building my best ball portfolio, but there's definitely different rosters that you build that can benefit from different players. Like, you know, sometimes if you need experience, if you need touches, if you've gone with someone like Travion Henderson earlier or Marion Hampton, then getting somebody like Etienne might buy you that early season touches and volume and high upside. But if you're already going with like Bijan out of the gate and you need somebody that can just give you some more nuclear upside down the back, then maybe Tuten can provide that. So I think it's a fun conversation point, definitely. And Andrew, you've been busy starring players whilst I've been waxing lyrical about all this best ball stuff that just bubbles away in my brain. And we got Trey Benson, David Njoku, Joshua Palmer, Hollywood Brown, and Dalton Kincaid. And then Isaiah Likely as well. We are 2 picks away. Who's the guy you're hoping falls to us the most out of this group?
It's probably Trey Benson. I just think that I think that he's going to have a massive role if and when James Conner misses time. James Conner stayed healthy basically for the first time in a long time. He played more than 13 games last year for the first time since 2021. And this Arizona offense, we already have Kyler Murray. This Arizona offense just is a rushing machine. It's been very effective. James Conner is top 10 in terms of yards from scrimmage the last 2 seasons. And I think that Trey Benson, yeah, he didn't show a lot last year because he got banged up towards the end. But if he had even flashed a little bit, if he had gotten that opportunity with James Conner and missed time last year, I think his ADP would be significantly higher, because I know Conner's going to miss games this year. And even if Benson doesn't have a standalone role alongside a healthy Conner, I think down the stretch, he can have a big role if Conner misses time.
Yeah, Connor's had at least 8 touchdowns in each of the last 3 seasons, consistently been undervalued for fantasy, but Father Time tends to be undefeated and he does tend to get banged up. So I'm good with that one. One pick away. We have 2, 4, 5, 1 at this point. So the running back position actually was gone from feeling like a weakness now to a point where we can start spreading our picks around and go with what we really feel like is best. Would you be happy taking Isaiah Likely and then saying that we're done at the tight end position, or would you rather go Joshua Palmer and build out that kind of wide receiver room a little bit more?
I mean, we can't do a show between us and not draft at least one Raven. We missed out on Rashad Bateman. So yeah, Isaiah Likely's got to be the guy. Isaiah Likely to me he just seems like he's just all gas, no brakes. Like he's like the ultimate upside pick that just goes 13th round. We know he can be a tight end one. Mark Andrews misses time. And every time they talk about Isaiah Likely from the coaching staff, it's, well, he's going to be in the Hall of Fame. That's the way that they look at this guy. And I think in the best ball format where we don't necessarily have to project the weeks where he does end up having a bigger role or the Ravens are trailing, these are the games where he just has monster performances. So if Andrews takes a step back, it's banged up, then likely he's going to be hitting our lineup in some of the biggest ways possible, especially with touchdown equity attached to Lamar Jackson. So again, I like Marquise Brown. I like Josh Palmer, but do I envision either of those guys having the type of ceiling that likely could bring, especially at tight end, which I think to your point, now we're done at tight end. We don't need to worry because McBride's going to he's going to fill in all those. And the only time likely he's probably going to outscore McBride is on the bye week. And then when likely just goes boom and goes absolutely, he absolutely erupts in some of these spots like we saw at week 1 of last year.
Yeah, and I think your point about touchdowns is so worthwhile because in half PPR format, touchdowns matter even more. It can really separate a good week to a great week. Last year, Isaiah Likely had 6 touchdowns, and that was even at a point where after week 1, up until later in the season, it felt like Isaiah Likely wasn't really giving you great weeks, but the only tight ends to have more touchdowns than him were Pat Fryermuth, Tucker Kraft, Jonnu Smith, Sam Laporta, George Kittle, and of course Mark Andrews, who had 10. So if a couple more of those swing Isaiah Likely's way, if we see the Ravens just lean more into Isaiah Likely, it wouldn't surprise me at all if in the next month we get an Isaiah Likely contract extension. All 3 of the Ravens tight ends currently under contract are all out of contract within the next year. So they're going to have to make some decisions on who they want to run things through. And Isaiah Likely has earned his opportunity. So I'm good with it. I think that's a fun one. Good question in the chat here from Para. What do you think about drafting both RBs from one team, Bijan Robinson and Ekeler for me? I think that there are definitely backfields that I want to do this with. There are backfields where there's enough ambiguity or enough situational stuff that you can look to work through it. I'm not necessarily sure about the Commanders because Bijan Robinson just hasn't displayed much ceiling. Like me and Andrew were both in on Bijan Robinson last year. We drafted him on our $350 Fantasy Pros Championship team on FFPC, and he did very little for us, really. Like when he wasn't scoring touchdowns, he was dead weight. Ekeler, I quite like, he ranked top 5 in target rate among running backs last year with like an 11.5% target share. He really seems like he should be going slightly higher. But yeah, there's definitely backfields where in best ball I'm okay with it, and redraft I'm not because I want those roster spots for other upside swings. Andrew, kind of how do you view that? Is there any backfields that you particularly would target for taking both running backs?
I think backfields are a little bit more ambiguous. So I know we talked about Jacksonville's. I have no issue taking shots on multiple guys because they're all going. I think the price is the big point where you're hoping that if they're all cheap, that you can get access to different paths. Because sometimes we see backfields where 1 week or it's during one part of the season, it's one guy's backfield, but then it exchanges hands because of an injury or something else happens.
Like
Another guy takes over. So I think that there's a lot of ways to. So I guess for me, like I kind of like the idea of drafting from the same backfield. So, like Kenneth Walker, for example, this is something I've been kind of theorizing, as a hero RB, right? He's not really viewed as a hero RB just because where he goes, but if you draft him and Charbonnet, like their combined scoring probably is that of a hero RB.
Yeah. Speaking of RB, we're about to go back on the clock in a moment. We've got 2-4-5-2. The wide receivers in this range are Adam Thielen, Jalen Noel, not necessarily guys that we would desperately want in this format, more full PPR guys. Braelon Allen, Rico Dowdle in the queue, though. Do you think that we could take one of these and then maybe done till like the 18th round? And if so, you got 15 seconds to make a case and click the buttons.
Braelon Allen, easy for me. I think that he's going to have a substantial role in the Jets offense. We already have Justin Fields. So if we're taking advantage, Fields has to be good for this team to have a shot. like we made that very, very clear when I can't speak for Tom. I'm the one that's driving yet again. And I reached on Justin Fields. So we need this Jets team to play well. So I think Braelon Allen could be a big part of that.
Yeah, and a lot of people. Okay, we're back on the clock, and then we'll do this. So, what we could finish out the running back room with Rico Dowdle. I'd be completely good with that. I think that Rico Dowdle again is one of the guys I've talked about today in this backup running back video. Good with that.
Let's do it.
I think like I'm just kind of fine with him over Michael Wilson, just in terms of the Cardinals team that we've built out. I think is probably okay. So grabbing that running back works for me. But just going back to Justin Fields, like a lot of the time you hear people talking about how dual threat running backs don't check the ball down, but Justin Fields absolutely checks the ball down. Justin Fields is absolutely willing to check the ball down, even when clean, not under pressure, at one of the highest rates in the league. You go back to 2022, and the only quarterback ahead of him that year was Russell Wilson. Last year when he was with the Steelers, again, comfortable checking the ball down to running backs. So I don't worry about the idea of stacking Justin Fields and Braelon Allen up. You could possibly say they negatively correlate, because if Justin Fields is hitting his ceiling, he's getting the rushing touchdowns and taking them away from Braelon Allen. But I'm kind of fine with it. I think that just overall betting on the Jets offense to be underpriced currently is the argument would put forward here.
Yeah, and this this one either could look really good when we look back on it, or it could age like some spoiled milk about being higher on the Jets and trying to draft Jets players aggressively. At least this year we're not drafting 2 Jets in the first round.
Yes.
I remember reading comments about 2 Jets in round 1. What could go wrong? And it's like, oh, basically everything could go wrong. And of course, yeah.
Yeah, I had that exact thought process a couple of days ago when I was drafting Ashton Genty in the first round. And then Brock Bowers fell to me in the second round. And I was like, do I draft 2 Raiders players in the first 18 picks? And it was something I just absolutely couldn't do. One guy who's towards the top of ADP at the minute, well, towards the top of your ranks, Andrew, so you might want to adjust it, is Anthony Richardson. Like, do you think Anthony Richardson's just fully toast at this point?
He's a harder and harder click to make and harder player to not move down rankings every time you kind of evaluate his situation, where it seems like he's more likely to – he's following the Trey Lance path, where he's constantly injured and he's not getting enough reps. And would it be beneficial for him to play in the XFL or Canadian football just to get more reps at quarterback? He's still so – young. He's younger than Cam Ward.
He's so raw as well. And he was always raw and he always needed that. But like, I think it's pretty hard to come back from passing the ball at a lower rate than some of Tebow's seasons. Like when you're completing less than 50% of your passes, it's really difficult to make the argument, okay, well, he absolutely slings the ball downfield. Okay, great. But we need catchable ball rate.
Yeah, it's tough for Richardson, especially based on what the Colts want to do offensively. Yeah. The Colts can't afford to lose so many games. And the thing is, because they play in the AFC South, they can probably win enough games to keep the GM there, keep the head coach there, because they don't want to get fired. Because if they come out and they lose a bunch of games, I mean, I get that, you know, the combined efforts from Daniel Jones and Anthony Richardson, assuming that he does come back at some point, I mean, maybe that can get them to 6, 7, 8 wins, and that keeps their jobs. But ultimately, it's hard to look at the Colts season and think, how is this season a success if Daniel Jones is the guy that leads them to wins? Is that a success? And then they have to sign him to a contract. And then does that actually help them in the long run? Now, I have kind of floated out the idea in my mind that is Daniel Jones the retread quarterback this year that hits, right? Geno Smith
Well,
a couple years back, Baker,
well,
Darnold.
that's my next question. If we're saying that Anthony Richardson's toast, then how much higher should Daniel Jones, somebody that we know has reasonable rushing upside, be going?
He should be going significantly higher, especially if you're playing for the cumulative scoring. I think the issue with Jones is you're concerned about what happens in the playoff weeks, whether he's the quarterback or not. But you could argue if he's playing so well that he's going to be in the playoff weeks additionally to the regular season. We saw, I think it was 2022, a couple of years ago, where he had 700 rushing yards in a Brian Daboll offense.
So
he's playing for his NFL life. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. So currently he goes at pick 216 on Underdog, which is essentially kind of right back end of round 18. Ahead of him, pick 201 is Aaron Rodgers, then Sam Darnold at 204, Cam Ward who's at 166. So like how much further could you push him up? Do you think he belongs ahead of Sam Darnold at kind of like in the 180 range, like 170 range, or would you push him ahead of Cam Ward, Geno Smith, Matthew Stafford?
I don't think I put him ahead of Cam Ward. I think that or Geno. Because I think that just logging starts is so important.
So it's basically ahead of Aaron Rodgers and maybe ahead of Sam Darnold.
Let's see. Yeah, so I have him my rank. So I have him QB 29, I have him behind Rodgers, Darnold, and Richardson. And for me, it's really I'm just not bullish on him being available in the playoff weeks. Like that is my major concern. And is he really a guy that, I got to the playoffs because of Daniel Jones? Maybe he's a quarterback that's also not been able to put it all together for an entire season. Like he's missed games. He's had dealt with injuries. Yeah. So I think he's undervalued based on how he can help a team as a third quarterback. But I don't know if he's going to be there in the playoff weeks.
Yeah. So we're about to go back on the clock. We've only got 5 wide receivers, so it feels like the vast majority of our last 3 picks probably need to be wide receiver, Andrew. I can see you've added Dyami Brown, KaVontae Turpin, Jalen Coker to the list. In terms of other players, can I make a case for Darius Slayton? Constantly undervalued. And then there's Calvin Austin. So we got 20 seconds. I'll let you make this one, but then when we come back around for the corner, I'm making the next pick.
That's fair. I will go with, I like Dyami Brown here. I think that he's, again, another guy, 5th-year receiver on a new team, checks off some boxes. Let's say all the defensive players get hurt on Jacksonville. They got to play Travis Hunter full-time on defense. And then there you go, Dyami Brown playing full-time on offense with Trevor Lawrence. Maybe could work out.
Against the Colts. So, yeah, show us the wide receiver tab, and let's have a look just purely at the wide receivers, please, Andrew.
Yes.
So, the guy who I want to take here is Tutu Atwell, please. I just think that Tutu Atwell seems completely locked into the wide receiver 3 role for the Rams. This year, we've seen how valuable that's been for Demarcus Robinson over the last couple of years. Tutu has come along to a reasonable level, and the Rams saw him bringing him back as not like a massive priority, but enough of a priority. And I just think that playing alongside Puka and Devontae Adams, that he can be a nice value this year.
I think that's a really sharp pick. We talked about Atwell. I think we drafted Atwell on our DraftKings team too a couple weeks ago because he's just going to have a bigger role in 3 wide receiver sets. Yeah. He's never going to be the focal point of the Rams offense, but Devontae is an older receiver. He's missed games. Puka, we know, plays like a maniac and just is not afraid to take contact, so he can miss games. So, yeah, Atwell is a guy that McVay is relatively high on versus the other receivers on that team. So I think that he's a great late value option.
So, yeah, and like you mentioned, he'll play in 3 wide receiver sets. The Rams play 3 wide receiver sets at one of the highest rates in the league. Andrew, with 1 pick left on the board, would you be so kind to recap the team for us, please?
Yes. Quarterback, we have Fields and Kyler Murray. We have at running back, Bijan Robinson, Jordan Mason, Bhayshul Tuten, Trey Benson, Braelon Allen, Rico Dowdle. At receiver, Garrett Wilson, Jaylen Waddle, Xavier Worthy, Ricky Pearsall, Rashid Shaheed, Dyami Brown, Tutu Atwell. And then at tight end, we have Trey McBride and Isaiah Likely.
Feels fun. What do you feel we're missing from this team?
I kind of feel we're not. I don't really feel like we're missing any positions because I don't feel like we need to have a third quarterback because the two guys we have are mobile players who can deliver week winning weeks. We have two good. We have our elite tight end. We have one of the best backup tight ends, handcuff tight ends you can have. So it's weird, but I feel like we don't need to be pressured to go in any which direction. It can almost be who's the best player available, and I think that we can go in that direction. So, for example, like Will Shipley's in the queue right now. Do we have to draft another running back? Oh, he's gone now, of course, because of I said his name. But I think it's right now it's kind of dealer's choice in terms of who we could pick, and someone that maybe correlates for a week 17 matchup, something that along those lines. I don't think there's really any other quarterback stacks. I know there's not really many Bengals. I mean, is Jermaine Burton on the board?
Let's not go there.
Let's not get crazy here.
Well, you could throw out AD Mitchell, or I imagine AD Mitchell might be there. Otherwise, you could be looking at guys like DJ Giddens or Khalil Herbert to throw on there for a little bit of correlation, but I'm not sure. I mean, DJ Giddens maybe is an interesting one, but I'm not sure we need the other running back. In terms of what else we've got there, obviously, the Cardinals played the Bengals, which is one of those matchups that everybody wants exposure to, and as such, it's quite difficult to get those pieces this late in the draft unless you're taking the dart throw on bit, and so maybe we just have to bypass that one. Quickly, just going to touch on this Dread S. What are we thinking about Drake May's value? Absolutely love him for me. One of my highest rostered quarterbacks so far. I'm 3 spots ahead of positional ADP on May myself. Andrew, as a Patriots fan, how do you feel about him?
I wish we had him on this team. Unfortunately, it just didn't work out in the roster build because we took Jets players instead of Patriots players. Drake May is. You think he's exactly what you want from a late round quarterback? Draft him in all formats.
Yeah, ranked like 4th, 5th in rushing yards per game among quarterbacks as well. The only guys ahead of him were all people who finished incredibly high up. So very much down with that one. We a few picks away currently, obviously a 2-6-7-2 build, which feels fine. I know some people will make passionate arguments one way or another. I think the way we've built this with a double tap of dual threat quarterbacks and then the elite tight end with the high upside tight end works nicely, and then just being able to attack volume at running back and wide receiver position has been fun. Raheem Mostert is somebody I've drafted a little bit of lately. I think there's an argument for him. Sometimes I'll throw in Marcus Valdez-Scantling in 20-round formats. I'm not sure I would here. Andrew, you've got KaVontae Turpin starred, who goes with an ADP of 215, and I think in a lot of drafts probably isn't getting drafted at all. What is it about KaVontae Turpin that makes you so aggressive on him?
The coaches have really raved about his abilities and special teams and getting the ball in his hands. So if Pickens is really taking the top off the defense, then I think that KaVontae Turpin could still be used a lot in that underneath option. And to me, he kind of reminds me a little bit of these under the radar wide receivers that sign contract extensions that nobody really cares about. Understandably, a lot of it has to do with, well, how does he add value on special teams? But before Juwan Jennings melted faces last year, he had a really productive game in the Super Bowl, and they signed him to a contract extension. The team showed that, hey, we really like this guy. And I think that, to me, suggests, okay, maybe I'm making a little bit of a bet against George Pickens. Let's say, I think on field, George Pickens makes so much sense. It's the perfect fit with Dak Prescott. But let's say he's the on field, his head's not on right exactly. So maybe KaVontae Turpin takes on a bigger role. We know that he can generate big plays, be explosive. So that's kind of my pitch with KaVontae Turpin. And I liked him a lot more, obviously, before the Pickens trade happened. But I still think that he has, again, an offense that we're decently excited about, should bounce back. I don't think it's ever a bad idea to be drafting players that the coaching staff is high on, especially with Schottenheimer not taking over play calling duties, necessarily what he was doing last year with Mike McCarthy still there. So he's seen what Turpin can do. And I think that he might, hey, we need to get this guy more schemed touches because he's explosive with the ball in his hands. And I think I was making a joke somewhere where I was talking to, okay, who runs more routes or who has a higher target rate per route run this year? KaVontae Turpin or Travis Hunter? just based on a per route basis, like they're both, honestly, would not surprise me if they're both over 30%, just based on when they're on the field, they're going to probably get the ball.
I think it's an interesting one. I think I'd probably be more interested in 20-round best ball or slightly deeper ones. In a classic fashion, the draft board seemed to just crash there when we got round to our 18th round pick. So, Andrew, who did we end up with for our final pick?
We did take KaVontae Turpin. Yeah.
Okay. All gas, no breaks. Love it. Three wide receivers to finish it out. Andrew, for one last time, would you mind recapping this team? And then we'll touch on a couple of things just quickly before we get out of here, because we are running long tonight.
Perfect. So we'll go in order in which we drafted the guys. So Bijan Robinson, Garrett Wilson, Trey McBride, Jaylen Waddle, Xavier Worthy, Justin Fields, Ricky Pearsall, Kyler Murray, Jordan Mason, Rashid Shaheed, Bhayshul Tuten, Trey Benson, Isaiah Likely, Braelon Allen, Rico Dowdle, Dyami Brown, Tutu Atwell, and KaVontae Turpin, wrapping us up with the 18th pick.
Hey, man, I think it's plenty of fun. I think that it's got all the hallmarks of a classic hero RB build, as we talked about. It's got the elite tight end. It's got the dual threat quarterbacks, which adds so much upside to it. The running back room, we attacked in volume, which definitely feels fun. We've got Pera in the chat saying that they went 3-7-6-2 for them in this draft. Probably should have taken one more wide receiver. I don't hate it, though. I think that they had a nice draft as well. Andrew, how do you feel about our draft before we get out of here?
I think that we did well in terms of following a hero RB build. I like that. That's usually my preferred strategy going in. I think when you get a top 3 pick where you can pick a Jahmyr Gibbs or in our case, a Bijan Robinson, it makes it really easy to go hero RB versus when you're picking at the back end of round 1 where you're really gravitating, I think, a little bit more toward those wide receivers. And then it's trying to figure out which of these other running backs in rounds 2 or round 3, can any of these guys be my hero running back? The Justin Fields pick will obviously now go down in either infamy or will be famously that we picked Justin Fields ahead of ADP. So we'll see how that shakes out. But I mean, the fact that Mahomes almost fell, so we could have gotten them back to back, that would have been pretty wild. Unfortunately, the draft room was too sharp and they did not let Mahomes fall one more pick to us. I like the running backs we got. A lot of only one rookie running back, which again, you're subjected to what other people are doing. But I think that there's a rule for me this year is you got to at least get one rookie running back on your team. This rookie class is just too good that even if you don't pick the right one, you got to take at least one shot on one of these rookie running backs, whether it's Ashton Genty in round 1 or any of these guys in the double-digit rounds. I think you just got to take at least one shot on some of these rookies. But at the same time, second-year running backs as well are also good investments. So we got 2 of those guys with Trey Benson and Braelon Allen. The receivers, I know I talked about it. Usually when you do hero RB with elite quarterback and elite tight end, usually receiver room is not great. I don't really feel that way about our receivers. Yeah. I feel pretty good about, having Wilson as a target hog, Waddle bounce back, a couple second-year wide receivers, Rashid Shaheed, Dyami Brown, Atwell, some guys that can deliver spike weeks. And then going with 2 tight ends and Trey McBride and Isaiah Likely. So again, I think it's always good to enter drafts with an open mind to what you could do. Again, going with Bijan, it's like, all right, we'll do hero RB. We'll see how it shakes out. And I think overall it shook out pretty well. I've definitely drafted probably teams that have been significantly worse than this team. And at the end of the day, no one knows exactly what's going to happen. But all I know is this team is going to take flight. I know that for sure.
Yes. Well, we've got a long way to find out if it works out. But if you want to keep drafting drafts with us, we appreciate everybody who's been hanging out in the chat and drafting alongside us. Every Monday here on Twitch, you can find myself and Andrew. We will be live at 4 p.m. Eastern. All you got to do is go to twitch.tv/fantasy pros. You'd be hanging out with myself and Andrew, drafting on a variety of platforms. You can always ask as many questions as you want, and we will take you through everything that we feel about best ball. I appreciate everybody who's been with us tonight, and myself and Andrew and producer Seth will be back next Monday. Catch you next time, guys.